Thank you PlayStation and Naughty Dog for the free copy of The Last of Us Part 2. So I realize the title to this video may seem confusing, but it's all about how we structure stories and myths. A common complaint with The Last of Us Part 2 story is that it's poorly paced and Ellie's story never feels truly resolved. Today, I'm going to look at why this is and illustrate why the epilogue works significantly better as a self-contained story. I will also address the Dina's Bracelet theory, an attempt to show that it misses the point of what the ending is all about by using the story structure theory. Hopefully, these two theories will help us not only address why Ellie's story feels unresolved, but also let us make predictions for what must happen in The Last of Us Part 3 to close out her hero's journey. The two story structure theories we're going to be using to show this transition are The Monomyth, or Hero's Journey, by Joseph Campbell, and Save the Cat by Blake Schneider. Save the Cat is an absurdly influential structural screenwriting book named for a moment that has to come early in the story where a hero does something that shows they are a person to root for, like saving a cat from a tree. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Alright, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. Alright, T-Strats, listen, alright? You're my man, and I'll mess with you. But right now, seems like you're reaching a bit. Now, if I'm gonna sit here and watch another one of your long-ass 20-minute plus explanation videos, you're gonna have to show me where. In a post-apocalyptic game that's centered around violence and revenge, where does anything like that happen? If you can't show me that, then I'm about to bounce.
We've gotta cut her loose. It's okay, calm down. Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you. It's okay. Damn it. It's really in there. Abs, come here.
Okay. I see what you're doing here.
The monomyth is the theory that heroes' stories from different cultures, religions, and time periods all share the same fundamental structure. This hero journey was codified in Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces and presented as being made up of 17 separate parts. Essentially, Campbell's work showed that all stories must have a hero that changes over the course of a journey to become a mythical hero they were destined to be. This is not just reflected in myths, but has formed the basis for many modern heroic journeys such as Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, The Lion King, and Harry Potter. Please don't get upset with me if I get the story beats wrong for these films. And if you haven't seen or read these works, I'm afraid massive spoilers for all of them are coming, as we are going to use examples from these films alongside The Last of Us Part 2 to demonstrate the universal structure. Now, not all stories must contain all 17 stages, and Christian Vogler broke them down into a 3-act structure incorporating 12 steps, which is far more manageable. At this stage, I'd also like to point out that my analysis of The Last of Us Part 2 ending and themes, which you can see here, is largely based off the symbolism and structure from the hero's journey. The main characters of The Last of Us must embark on a journey to transition into becoming heroes. In a nutshell, the hero's journey is about the transformation of the hero, allowing them to renew their world. In order to undertake this journey, Vogler proposed a 3-act structure of departure, initiation, and return. The journey essentially involves the hero leaving their normal world, going through a series of trials and tribulations, and then returning to their world with a gift or power which enriches it. Abby's story in The Last of Us Part 2 is no exception, so let's go through how Naughty Dog structured her heroic cycle. If you disagree with any of the steps I'm about to list, I love to hear your reasons in the comments section, and I will address issues with the story and its structure, such as the pacing, after we've completed Abby's hero journey. The first act of the heroic journey is the departure, and Abby's journey is no different. First of all, we see the hero in their natural habitat or normal world. In The Lord of the Rings, we see Frodo living comfortably in the Shire, Simba as heir to the throne in The Lion King, Luke Skywalker walking on his uncle's moisture farm, and Harry Potter living in a cupboard. For Abby, the stadium and the forward operating base act as her ordinary world. We not only see Abby easily interacting and socializing in the wolf structure, we also are introduced to the benefits of being a wolf when we are saved at the gas station ambush. We can see that Abby is a well-respected part of the wolves' militia and is at ease in this environment, even around the more unpleasant parts of its nature. A call to adventure is then given to the hero, where the hero is informed of a danger or need facing the community. For Frodo, it's Gandalf telling him that he must destroy the One Ring. For Simba, it's the murder of his father. For Luke, it's stumbling upon R2-D2's messages from Leia. And for Harry, it's a letter inviting him to the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. For Abby, her call to adventure is being informed that Owen has killed a fellow wolf to help a Scar, and is now essentially marked for death unless he returns to the fold. Abby must venture out of her ordinary world to save Owen. The next stage in the departure, or first act, is the refusal of the call. The hero refuses their journey at first, due to both their fears and insecurities, but also preferring the safe haven of their ordinary world. For Harry, he doesn't believe he can actually become a wizard. Luke is reluctant to accept Obi-Wan's offer to become a Jedi. Simba retreats to the desert, and Frodo is reluctant to leave the life he knows in the Shire. For Abby, the refusal of the call is when she leaves Yara and Lev after escaping both the Seraphites and Infected. Abby will not abandon her loyalty to the wolves' philosophy and leaves two innocent children that helped her alone in a world where the wolves, Seraphites, and Infected will kill them on sight. The penultimate stage in the departure is meeting with the mentor. Having established the task ahead will be tremendously challenging for the hero. The mentor provides them with physical, mental, or spiritual help. For Simba, it's being introduced to Timon and Pumbaa. For Luke, it's the offer from Obi-Wan to train him in using his father's lightsaber to become a Jedi. Harry is taken by Hagrid to Diagon Alley and shown the school equipment he needs to purchase. And Gandalf introduces Frodo to the Fellowship of the Ring. Now for Abby, it's the vision of Lev and Yara, with implication it's sent from her father. In Campbell's 17-step structure, the mentor figure is often one of supernatural aid, and in Abby's case, the similarity of the dream sequence with the nightmares of her father seems to confirm that the vision is sent from her father. However, an argument could be made that Lev is the mentor, as he offers Abby spiritual help in the form of the Seraphite scripture, and also helps her overcome her fear of heights. This occurs when the hero leaves their ordinary world and enters a dangerous new one. For Luke, this is agreeing to accompany Obi-Wan to Alderaan and to deliver the Death Star schematics. For Harry, it's entering platform 9 3/4. For Simba, it's accepting his new lifestyle of Hakuna Matata with Timon and Pumbaa. And for Frodo, it's obviously setting off to Mount Doom. For Abby, this new world will be found by accompanying Lev to get the needed supplies for Yara. Although Abby steps out of the aquarium with Lev, the actual crossing of the threshold is after navigating the rapids to a tall building where Abby must use one of the Seraphites' rope ladders. She's about to enter into the realm of the Seraphites and upwards into a new and strange world in the sky that she didn't even know existed. This completes the first part of the hero's cycle. We can see that Naughty Dog tried to structure Abby's section of the game alongside these basic story premises. It's a classic adventure story that establishes her old world, which she must now leave behind if she is to overcome her flaws and become the hero that the world needs. There are issues with the execution of these story beats that I will explore when we compare this to Ellie's own journey in the epilogue. And don't worry, I will be addressing the Dina Bracelet theory at that point too. In the initiation, or second act, the hero enters this new world and must face a series of trials in order to complete their transformation before facing the main enemy of the story. In this step, the hero must navigate and learn the rules of this new world, enduring tests and coming face to face with enemies and allies alike. For the Fellowship in The Lord of the Rings, these are their adventures in the mines of Moria, culminating in meeting the Balrog. For Luke, it's meeting Han Solo and Chewbacca on their quest to Alderaan. And for Harry, it's navigating the rules of the new world he discovers at Hogwarts with Ron and Hermione. For Simba, it's his meeting Nala and their eventual romance. In Abby's journey, we find her and her ally Lev fighting Seraphites in the vertigo-inducing setting of a destroyed skyscrapers and taking on hordes of infected when cutting through a hotel. The Skybridge functions as a test for Abby and her well-established fear of heights, but also shows her personal growth as she relies on Lev for help and guidance. Moreover, along the way we learn more of the Seraphite worldviews, and Abby begins to see her role in this pointless struggle. By the time she meets her ally Nora, we can see that Abby has begun to question her loyalty to the wolves and is ready for the next stage of her heroic journey. In this stage, the hero has learned the rules of this new world and is now able to approach its final test. This obstacle lurks in the heart of this new world and represents its most challenging test. The approach to the Inmost cave is usually a relaxing of pace, but an increase of tension or atmosphere. For Harry, it's his plan to get the Philosopher's Stone before Snape, and for Frodo, it's realizing the corrupting powers of the ring means he and Sam must leave the Fellowship. After the destruction of Alderaan, Luke must journey into the Death Star to save Princess Leia, and Simba realizes he must venture back to the Pridelands to reclaim his throne. For Abby, the Inmost cave is the hospital basement. Abby must navigate through ground zero of the Seattle cordyceps infection in order to find the supplies for the dying Yara. Having been sealed off for many years, Abby has no idea what horrors could be lurking down there. The Ordeal is the final step in the hero's journey of transformation. They must overcome a deadly test using all the new skills they have learned along the way. For Luke, it's saving Leia but witnessing the death of Obi-Wan at the hands of Darth Vader. For Harry, it's overcoming the traps and obstacles protecting the Philosopher's Stone. And for Frodo, it's fighting the monstrous Shelob. Meanwhile, Simba must choose between his easy life with Pumbaa and Timon or risking it to save his kingdom. For Abby, it's her showdown with the Rat King. Now, viewers of my The Last of Us Part 2 The Ending Explained video will hopefully recall I argued that the Rat King was symbolic imagery, and this is due to Step 8 of Campbell's original monomyth, Atonement with the Father. For both Abby and Simba, the murders of their father has weighed heavily upon them, and this is the moment they are able to let go and continue along the journey. The Rat King is symbolic of Abby's father, and in order to be free of her visions of his murder, she must overcome this final test to complete her transformation. For those of you wondering about how I analyzed The Last of Us Part 2, I hope you now have your answer. This step of the heroic cycle is exactly what it sounds like. The hero has overcome their most difficult challenge and is now able to take possession of the treasure or reward, although it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical item. For Luke, it's realizing his dream of joining the rebellion, and for Harry, it's taking possession of the Philosopher's Stone. With Simba, after his atonement with his father Mustafa, he has now transformed into a hero who can reclaim his throne confirmed to him by a vision. For Frodo, it's the destruction of the ring. For Abby, it's not only escaping with the supplies needed to save Yara, it's freedom from the guilt and anger over her father's death and the growth she has experienced along the way. At the start of her journey, she was to lead an attack on the Seraphites' island to wipe them out once and for all, but now has emerged renewed in spirit after her trials. In a reversal of the call to adventure, the hero must now journey back with the reward to the ordinary world we first found them in. However, sometimes the hero must need a little push to choose between their own personal happiness and a higher cause. For Luke, it's refusing Han's offer to flee the rebel base and instead choosing to overcome the Empire. And Harry must now face Professor Quirrell and He Who Must Not Be Named. Simba returns to the Pridelands, ready to face his murderous uncle, and for Frodo, it's his escape with the Eagles. For Abby, the return to the normal world is as simple as a boat trip with Lev, although in her transformed state, she may be able to see new meaning in it. This stage of the hero's journey can be interpreted in many ways. It can be cleansing or purification for the hero, or a final physical ordeal or showdown that threatens the entire ordinary world. The concept that unites all of these, though, is that the hero must apply all that they have brought back from the special world. In Star Wars, the resurrection is where Luke listens to Obi-Wan and uses the Force to destroy the Death Star. Harry awakens in a hospital bed, as does Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. Simba learns that Scar killed his father and avenges this death by killing his uncle. With Abby, we see signs of her purification as she admits to Owen she has lost her way before she sees her final vision of her father, and for the first time we see her awaken peacefully. Abby has shaken off her anger and guilt and has reached atonement with her father, and is now using the lessons she learned from her adventure with Lev to see the ordinary world in a new light. This stage is where we see that our hero has been resurrected and purified and has earned the right to be accepted back into their ordinary world. They are able to share the Elixir, which can be material or immaterial, with others, or to heal a wounded land. Harry once again returns to Privet Drive, delighted to have found his place at Hogwarts. Simba has reclaimed the throne and can heal the damage his Uncle Scar did to Pride Rock. A transformed Frodo, free of the corruption of the One Ring, can cross with the elves to the Grey Havens, and Luke is the hero of the rebellion, taking his first steps towards becoming a Jedi Knight. Abby has returned with the supplies needed to save Yara, but also shows the lessons she has learned while she tells Owen to stay with Mel, as she has prioritized other needs over her own. This is not the same woman that risked her crew's life to travel halfway across the country to torture and kill Joel. Abby has finally completed all the stages necessary to become a hero. However, the hero's journey is a cycle, and this cycle can start again. We see this with Abby, where she once again embarks on a hero's journey to regain her identity as a Firefly. There's the crossing the threshold and test allies and enemies in a new world. There's even another atonement with the Father, and the reward of finding Lev alive. In Abby's final fight with Ellie, we see that Lev, acting as the Elixir, allows her to overcome her anger and rage and let Ellie and Dina go. This second cycle has purified Abby once more, as she is now able to leave behind her past and reclaim her role as a hopeful Firefly. It's worth noting at this point that the execution of Abby's journey isn't perfect and suffers some structural issues. First is the introduction of this journey, being that it comes at the ordeal or atonement of the Father section of Ellie's journey. Ellie also has followed a hero's journey, with a call to adventure, crossing the threshold, approach to the innermost cave, and then the game transitions when the player is about to finally face the ordeal and avenge Joel with the introduction of Abby. However, when we cut from this incomplete journey, the first thing we experience as a young Abby is an overt attempt at the Save the Cat beat involving a zebra. The scene actually works very well in some aspects, such as setting up the world and life that Joel is going to take from Abby, but it is delivered with less subtlety than Abby with a golf club, and the player notices. The lack of sophistication in this scene, I believe, actually works in the opposite way that Naughty Dog intended, and combined with the lack of resolution with Ellie's pivotal scene, biases the player even further against Abby. Moreover, the call to adventure and refusal of this call are also poorly implemented. This is because of two main issues, being the pacing of events and the lack of cohesion between them. When we find out that Abby must return with Owen, we are instantly plunged into a lengthy flashback designed to build up their relationship and establish certain story themes. When Abby is knocked unconscious by the Seraphites, we once again have a flashback to Abby visiting Owen and telling him of their plans to charge halfway across the country on the back of a rumor that Joel may be in Jackson. As I will try to show later in this video, the pacing between these events is far too slow, as it takes too long to hit the key beats, and thus the pacing of Abby's story slows significantly. I also believe the implementation of Abby's refusal of the call to adventure is poorly executed. The refusal of the call is one of the key steps in the hero's journey because it makes the hero more relatable to the audience. They are meant to show their fears, insecurities, and flaws that not only resonate with the audience, but show us what they have to address to overcome them. This refusal of the call to adventure doesn't have an awful lot in common with the initial call to adventure, as they involve different people, themes, and scenarios. The reason the call to adventure is bringing Owen back into the fold is because it forces Abby out of her ordinary world and all the protection and comforts afforded to her at the stadium. Disappointingly, it actually only functioned as a way for Abby to meet Yara and Lev, and the world and character building needed to establish Owen as someone worth saving for Abby significantly slows this down. Furthermore, the refusal of the call is actually done over two scenes. First, with Abby recognizing that Yara and Lev will likely be killed if they don't move in the morning, but she still leaves them. And then in the boat with Owen, she refuses a separate call related to the second cycle of her hero's journey when she turns down the opportunity to head out to Santa Barbara in search of the Fireflies. It then turns into a bizarre sex scene, which may have made sense if Abby was to become pregnant later in the story, but in reality, it just feels like a messy execution of one of the most pivotal beats in the hero's journey. The one overriding issue that underpins the problems I have with this first act is the lack of structure. It takes far too long to set up the themes of Abby's journey and the ordinary world she must leave behind to rectify her character faults and move towards healing the flaws in her world. When compared to the epilogue, it feels drawn out, and there's very good reason for that. While the hero's journey for Abby seems to have been based on Vogler's loose structure, the epilogue appears to have been based on the strict structure of Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. Save the Cat is an absurdly influential screenwriting guide that has been used in nearly every movie you've seen in the last 10 years. It takes the hero's journey and uses a rigorous structure that dictates on which page each of its 15 beats must be used. Films as varied as Avengers Endgame to Legally Blonde to How to Train Your Dragon have all been based on this rigorous framework. Personally for me, I found the epilogue to be the best paced and most rewarding story told in The Last of Us Part 2, and that's because I think it follows the beats set out in Save the Cat. The opening image shows us a snapshot of what life is like for our hero in their ordinary world, and we can see this established straight away with the idyllic farmhouse that Dina, Ellie, and JJ all live in. It has the symbolic long grass as Jackson, which I believe represents the Greek paradise for triumphant heroes of Elysium, also depicted here in Gladiator. Although Abby and Lev feature at the start of the epilogue, this is Ellie's story, and we will only be concentrating on her, although what the events of the epilogue mean for Abby will be discussed later. This is normally an offhand comment made to the main character containing the theme of the story, which they don't understand at the time. An example of this is when Princess Leia says, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." Luke doesn't realize it yet, but he is their only hope, and the theme of the whole Star Wars trilogy will be about hope. In Harry Potter, we can find his Uncle Vernon telling Harry that magic isn't real. Over the course of this series, Harry will realize the real magic is in the love and acceptance of his friends and family. There is no theme stated in the epilogue, as it's been reinforced several times in the game, being the cycle of revenge and its effects. The setup is where the emotional story of the hero is established alongside both their personal faults and the faults of the ordinary world they live in. In both The Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, we are introduced to Frodo and Luke, both yearning for adventure but stuck in their small corner of the universe. For Ellie, the setup and the opening moments of the epilogue are masterfully done when compared to Abby's journey. We see Ellie has been living comfortably with Dina and JJ and has become a parental figure to JJ. She is in a caring and loving relationship with Dina, but all is not well. We see she has a form of PTSD, which indicates a number of different things. Firstly, her flaw or issue that must be addressed is coming to terms with the death of Joel. It also reveals that Ellie doesn't seem to be troubled by the prospect of a vengeful Abby returning to finish the job she started in the Seattle theater, as Abby isn't present in her episodes. This setup works well because it rapidly and efficiently communicates the details and problems that Ellie has in her new family life with Dina and JJ. The catalyst is an inciting incident which functions in the same way as the call to adventure. It's something that must happen to the protagonist, propelling them on their journey. In this case, the catalyst is the arrival of Tommy and his information that Abby has been sighted. At this point, both Ellie and the player believe that for Ellie to deal with Joel's death, she must deal with Abby. It is also worth pointing out that at this stage, the Save the Cat structure is also specific to different film types. The Last of Us Part 2 and its epilogue would be defined as a Golden Fleece film, where the hero goes in search of one thing but ends up discovering themselves, with each step along the way affecting the hero's transformation. However, in the structure of a horror film known as Monster in the House, there is a character trope known as the half-man. The half-man serves as both a false mentor to the hero and as a partial survivor who has come away damaged by their interaction with the monster. In this case, Tommy serves not only as the catalyst to Ellie's journey, but also as a warning to her, being partially crippled and estranged from his wife, Maria. A warning that Ellie will not heed, and one that we will come back to when we deal with Dina's bracelet. The debate functions along the same line as the refusal of the call to adventure. However, in Save the Cat, the debate also relates to the themes established and the flaws of the protagonist. In the epilogue, the debate starts when Ellie recalls the fight she has at the Jackson dance with Joel. This is a lovely touch, as once again it shows that Ellie's issue is not with Abby, it's about her and Joel. This prompts her to try to leave without telling Dina, and the debate continues with Ellie explaining why she has to leave and Dina begging Ellie to stay for their family. Dina points out that she has dealt with the deaths of many of her loved ones, including Jesse, and tells Ellie that she must do the same with Joel. It's at this moment that Ellie's mind is made up as she makes to leave their house, not when Dina mentions Abby. This reinforces that Ellie's flaw that needs to be overcome is centered around Joel, and not Abby. This opening act of the epilogue is a masterful construction when compared to the first act of Abby's journey. The catalyst and debate occur rapidly, and the flashback used serves the motivation of Ellie, and is not used as an exposition for why Abby would try to save Owen. The themes are tied into both the catalyst and the debate, and the flaw which Ellie must address is presented cleanly and interestingly. This sets the stage for the second act of her journey. The break into 2 beat is the transition into the second act of the story, and the transition of the character from their ordinary world into a new one. It's analogous with the crossing the threshold, and in the case of Ellie, it's disembarking from the boat into the new world of Santa Barbara. If the A story is the physical goal, the B story is the emotional goal. And since all stories are about transformation, at some point the B story will have to cross paths with the A story to help the hero complete this transformation. The B story can be seen as the help the hero needs to overcome their flaws, and because of this, it's most often expressed as the love story. In the epilogue, the A story is Ellie hunting down Abby, but the B story is how she feels about Joel. This is exhibited here with the illustrations in her journal. The fun and games section of a film is where we see the promise of the premise, such as a superhero discovering their powers. In Star Wars, it's Luke learning and training in the Force and escaping the Empire and the Millennium Falcon. In the epilogue of The Last of Us Part 2, the promise of the premise is fighting the infected as Ellie. We finally get back to the unique skills that Ellie has over Abby and can use our reacquired arsenal to take down the infected. The midpoint is where the hero achieves a false victory or a false defeat. The stakes are raised and a ticking clock element is introduced. We see the majority of these when Ellie is caught up in one of the Rattler's traps. She finds out that Abby is indeed nearby, raising the stakes, but she is severely wounded and it becomes unclear if she can infiltrate the Rattlers to get to Abby, which for Ellie is a false defeat. There is no ticking clock introduced as the player is aware that Ellie isn't going to turn from her clicker bite, but I personally did wonder at this point if it might have some bearing on the story. With the stakes now raised and the fun and games concluded, Save the Cat dictates that the villains of the story must now throw up harder obstacles for the hero to overcome. This can be where the hero finds their gifts are no longer as effective as they thought, as more dangerous opponents emerge. For example, the Ringwraiths in The Lord of the Rings, or the Hyenas in The Lion King. For Ellie, it's the Rattlers and their helmets. Both Ellie and the player must adjust to the increasing difficulty as the inaction and pace of the game begins to ramp up. This increase of pace leads us to the all is lost moment. This is where the hero reaches their lowest point. They seem to have lost more than they have gained, and completing their quest seems impossible. It is also where a main character dies, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, or the threat of death is at its strongest. For Ellie, her all is lost moment is discovering that Abby is not only not in the holding cell, but is most likely dead. Ellie's entire quest has been in vain, and she is now bleeding to death in a strange and horrible world, far away from the idyllic family life she abandoned. The dark night of the soul is where the hero processes the all is lost moment. The hero mourns the loss of what has either literally or metaphorically died, such as Frodo and Luke mourning the deaths of Obi-Wan and Gandalf. The dark night of the soul for Ellie is her walk to the pillars, as she processes what her world now looks like as she seemingly bleeds to death. The dark night of the soul closes the second act, and we must transition into the final act with Break into 3. This is normally the result of fresh information, advice, or understanding, and is traditionally associated with the B story. For Luke, it's the plan to attack the Death Star. Frodo and Sam realize they must venture into Mordor alone, and for Simba, it's finding out his uncle was his father's murderer. For Ellie, it's the discovery that Abby is alive but barely recognizable from their previous encounters. This is the climax of the film where the hero acts on this new information, normally from the B story, and becomes the best version of themselves. Think of Luke finally trusting himself to use the Force to take out the Death Star. For Ellie, we see the B story of her unresolved feelings for Joel cross with the A story of her hunt for Abby. I've already gone through this in great detail in my The Last of Us Part 2 The Ending Explained video, but with herself at not being able to forgive Joel for concealing the truth about St. Mary's to her. The flaw Ellie has needed to address is her inability to forgive others and herself. She allows Abby and Lev to leave. It seems clear she has resolved this, but at great cost. The final image is contrasted with the opening image and shows the change that the hero's character transformation has brought both to themselves and the world they departed from. It's here where we are going to address the theory of Dina's bracelet. The theory goes that when Ellie was in Santa Barbara, she wasn't wearing Dina's bracelet, nor had it in her backpack. Moreover, she has no weapons on her, and when she returns to the farmhouse, she isn't surprised to find it empty. The theory is that Ellie has already reconciled with Dina and has simply returned to the farmhouse to reclaim Joel's guitar before she lets both Joel and the guitar go and returns back to Dina. It's a nice theory of a secret happy ending for Ellie, but I'm afraid I think it's wrong. The reason I think this is because of the contrast between the opening and final images and how they show the ordinary world has been changed by the character transformation of the hero. Here we find that Ellie's actions have lost her the idyllic family life first seen in the opening image. The love and safety provided by her family have been lost because of her relentless pursuit of vengeance, and is confirmed by the contrast between the two images. The farmhouse would have been Ellie's happy ending if she had been able to forgive both Joel and herself. Now I know this seems like a bummer, but it's actually a happy ending of sorts, as it's an exciting starting point for Ellie's next cycle of the heroic myth. Using the structure of the hero's journey, we can not only speculate on what will likely happen in The Last of Us Part 3, but also what must happen. So take this as the world's most optimistic spoiler warning. While I suspect The Last of Us Part 3 will use a traditional 3-arc structure, we can see from the first 2 games that Ellie's hero journey has already touched on some important milestones. The call to adventure would be Ellie finding out she's immune to the cordyceps infection, and her mentor would obviously be Joel. We've seen her cross into countless new worlds, and at the conclusion of Part 2, seen her reach atonement with her father. The remaining stages are the reward, the road back, resurrection, and return with the Elixir. Now, I know what some of you are thinking.
What? She lost Joel, she lost Dina, she lost JJ, she lost her house, and she even lost her guitar playing fingers, man!
While all this is true, there's also a significant reward that will let Ellie continue on her path to being a hero. Ellie has won the freedom to choose for herself. Both Marlene and Joel are surrogate parents to Ellie, and both had diametrically opposing views on how to best use her immunity. The self-centered Joel obviously tried to protect Ellie and himself by keeping her immunity secret, whereas Marlene's more utilitarian view sees Ellie's sacrifice as the ends justifying the means. She has also discovered that her immunity is unique. If you watched my Why Does Joel Save Abby video, you will already be aware that I believe that a lot of Ellie's anger in The Last of Us Part 2 is due to her struggles to reconcile the deaths of Tess, Riley, and Sam with the fact that her immunity is meaningless. Ellie's reward for the agonizing journey she undertook in The Last of Us Part 2 is that her immunity has meaning once again, and she's now free to choose how to proceed. The Last of Us has always been about Ellie's immunity and the repercussions it causes. The Last of Us Part 2 might focus on a more personal story of revenge, but Abby and Ellie's respective journeys perfectly set the stage for an incredible conclusion in Part 3. I think it's important to note that not a single member of Abby's crew was in the least bit interested that there was a girl who was immune. They were all only focused on killing Joel and wiping out the Seraphites. Abby's journey has cleansed her of these 2 misconceptions and set her on a path to rejoining the Fireflies. Ellie is now able to decide on her own merits how to proceed with the knowledge that she is special once again and might hold the cure to humanity.
Alright, I'm in.
So here's one thought on how The Last of Us Part 3 will play out. First, I think the start of the game and the ordinary world will be Jackson. And while her return home offers hope, I think we will see Ellie living a depressing life, either on the outside or on the outskirts of the city walls. I think she'll be acting as a divorced parent to JJ, only allowed limited visits, and in an acrimonious relationship with both Tommy and Dina for her actions during the epilogue. I also think we will see 2 main antagonistic forces, and what I'm speculating is the final chapter in the Last of Us trilogy. The first being the realization that an unstoppable horde of infected is going to descend upon Jackson, and the second is Ellie's immunity will no longer be a secret and that several factions will be vying to hunt her down. I believe that Ellie will leave Jackson once again in a last-ditch attempt to gather allies and prepare for the invasion of this clicker horde. Now, in The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Star Wars, we have all seen this type of approach being used to conclude the story. A location or group of people that represent the values of humanity being threatened by overwhelming odds, while the protagonist ventures on a separate quest to destroy the root of this evil. I strongly believe The Last of Us Part 3 will be no different. In fact, the events of The Last of Us Part 2 have paved the way for the resurrection of the Fireflies, and I believe this is where Ellie may be heading next. With all this in mind, I believe Abby will play a significant role in Part 3, but will not be a main character. It would make sense that Ellie would seek out the Fireflies' help against this horde, and that Abby would be involved in either helping the people of Jackson or in guiding Ellie further along her path. So I believe the road back section of Ellie's journey will work on two levels, as she is not only physically traveling somewhere to find a solution for the catastrophe barreling towards Jackson, but is also emotionally returning to who she was in the first The Last of Us game. No longer weighed down by guilt and having rediscovered a purpose, I think we will see Ellie earning acceptance again. I also think that the AI companion will be bitten fairly early in this journey, and we will begin to see them turn over the course of the game. This would serve as two dramatic purposes, as we will see Ellie struggle with her guilt at being immune, and also serve as a bridge to her own final reckoning. The resurrection or final purification where the conflicts are resolved can only realistically be one thing. Ellie will have to seek out and face the difficult choice to sacrifice herself to create a vaccine. I also believe the Save the Cat B story of The Last of Us will play a part here, and the B story is Joel and Ellie. I think that Ellie will be tempted during the course of the game to assume a new identity in a new group and forsake her role as the chosen one. With all the pressures of having to save Jackson and with dealing with the dilemma of whether to sacrifice herself, I wonder if an overwhelmed Ellie will lose her appetite for the upcoming battles. However, I believe Joel's words of, "No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for," will give Ellie the courage to make this ultimate sacrifice. There's also something important to note about this potential cure theory. In The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Harry Potter, the downfall of the opposing forces is essentially instantaneous, and this must also be the case in The Last of Us Part 3. It is also important to note that no one can control the cure. It must be distributed freely. I suspect that Ellie's infection is dormant, and that some mechanism such as gas or water will be used to instantly provide immunity to the people of Jackson, but also disable the infected on the spot. It is vitally important that Ellie's sacrifice cannot be controlled by any faction, and everyone must benefit from it, or it just becomes another form of control and oppression. This climax would obviously be the return with the Elixir, but who would be providing it? The Last of Us universe is a relentlessly dark and depressing one, and it seems fitting that Ellie will need to die in order to renew it. However, The Last of Us has also always been about hope. The hope Tess had that Ellie could deliver them. The hope of a jaded assassin in rejoining the Fireflies. The hope in a broken man rediscovering his role as a father. We may not have seen a happy ending in The Last of Us yet, but we have seen a resurrection, and I believe we are going to see another. I believe Ellie will survive the operation to provide the cure. I believe we will see her join her allies back in Jackson, and I believe we will see the destruction of the cordyceps infection. In the final scenes of the game, I envision a content Ellie standing in the new world she has built. A world where she can now live as everyone is now like her, immune. Ellie's journey will have made everyone special, so she can now be just an ordinary girl in an extraordinary world. I think we will see a hopeful future as she reconciles with Dina and Tommy, and they can all begin to build a safer world for JJ. They will become the first in this reborn world. The first of us. Now that I've given one version of The Last of Us Part 3, I invite you all to do the same. This month's Last of Us Community Challenge will be unlike any other we've ever held, as I now challenge you to use the hero's journey to show us how you believe The Last of Us should conclude. My next livestream will be this Wednesday, October 14th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. and will be devoted to questions, observations, or suggestions you have on this video essay on the hero's journey. A second live stream will be held on Saturday, October 24th at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I will present some of the most creative and interesting Last of Us Part 3 stories that have been shared by viewers like you. The hashtag is TLOU Journey, TLOU Journey. If you would like to be involved in any of these events, please subscribe to the channel and follow me at TLOU Strategist on Twitter. If you can't fit your summary of The Last of Us Part 3 into 144 characters, please use TwitLonger, but make sure to use the hashtag TLOU Journey so I can find it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'd be delighted to hear from you either on Twitter or here in the comments. But please don't flame me over Star Wars or Harry Potter though. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.